It's 8 o'clock. Should we get started? Okay, so it's 8 a.m. I would like to call the January 11th Wacom County Public Utility District Commission regular meeting to order. And the first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. And we will be slightly modifying how we do the Pledge of Allegiance to engage staff. So Steve, who will be doing the pledge today?
Brian will be doing it this morning.
Great.
Brian is having trouble getting on. So
I can
do it. Would you like me to do it?
Sure.
That would be great.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Rebecca.
You're welcome.
The next item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. So we are going off the revised agenda that Anne emailed to the commission on Friday at about 12:30, and that's posted on the website, not the paper copy that was mailed to the commissioners. So are there any proposed changes to that agenda? Okay, then I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make that motion to approve the agenda.
And I'll second it.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. The motion carries. Thank you. The next item is the consent agenda, the approval of the meeting minutes from the special meeting of December 21st, and the approval of claims for January 11th.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as it reads.
I'll second that.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, the motion carries. And the next item is public comment. And Rebecca, could you please facilitate?
Yes, at this point in time, I do not see any raised hands under the attendees.
Okay, great. Well, we will close public comment, and there will be another public comment session later in the agenda. So now we are going to move on to old business. And the first item under old business is the broadband program update. So Steve or Andrew, can you please take this one?
I'm going to add Andrew. I don't know if he's prepared or not to make a few comments, and then I'll follow up. And maybe Christine, you may have some comments also. So.
I think Andrew is just at an attendee at this point, so I don't know if he can speak unless we upgrade him.
I will upgrade him.
Okay.
I got him already.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Yep, and Brian as well.
Thank
Andrew, did you have any comments regarding the broadband program?
Good morning. Yep, I can be quick here. I did observe the Bellingham Broadband Advisory Work Group, which I believe was just the first week of January. And Magellan, Jory, and a fellow named Greg, I believe, did a great update on where they are with their work on the specifically the survey that they have going on right now. And my notes are accurate, and I know I heard some others in this room attend as well. But I think they're at roughly 1,300 surveys for their city broadband survey. And there's some questions about whether that was enough and things like that. But Jory and Greg from Magellan seem to celebrate that number, and we're excited about that response rate. And that will end at the end of January, unless they decide to. The survey will close at the end of January unless they decide to extend that out. Also, Commissioner Grant provided me with contact information from essentially Google and some Google engineers who are interested in working in our community, which is really exciting. And they're also really focused on leasing infrastructure, leasing broadband infrastructure from the public entity. So they agree with that kind of arrangement. So we're working through that and how they can, what we can do to work together long term. So those conversations are happening. And then other than that, just my day to day is just staying laser focused on the PUDs and the Port of Bellingham's existing joint agency initiatives, which does align with funding for rural, underserved, and unserved areas, and open access and dark fiber. So that's what I have for you today. I'll kick it back over to you, Steve.
Thanks, Andrew. The only thing I had was that, and I was going to talk a little bit more about it at the manager's report, but there are several bills that have been already introduced in the legislature regarding broadband funding, changes in the way the CURB program works. And there's one bill that talks about increasing the rate of speed for that would be considered unserved. And I think I counted 7 bills that have been already introduced both on the Senate and the House side. So we're monitoring that. And this morning there's actually a hearing. It's going on this morning on 2 of them. So I don't know if Christine, I don't have anything else.
I know that one of those bills relates to CURB funding, and perhaps you could forward the email Gina sent us. I know we obviously can't participate in it because we are in this meeting right now, but we can submit comments if we want to support that CURB funding.
Yeah.
So Atul, you have your hand raised. Is that on purpose or okay, Atul? Oh.
So I just wanted to add to Andrew's comments on the city's back group. There's a concern that I've raised, and I think there's some support amongst the voting members for the concern that I raised, and I'll continue to raise it, which is about the survey and whether the survey will get input from the people who are least likely to get service. There's the economic aspect of the digital divide. Renters tend to be less responsive. Lower income people tend to be less responsive to these surveys. And, as a result, I raised those concerns. Other people echoed in, and there's been some subsequent email dialogue among in the BAG group about the need for addressing coverage of the survey, not just in terms of raw numbers, but on the people that we want the input from. And this is relevant actually to comments I'm planning to make under the other item under old business, which is public comment policy. It's really important for us whenever we want to understand what the community wants, which is pretty much all the time, except the thing is how to focus that effort on things that we're actually deliberating on. We have to do our work in terms of asking for the input that we want, and if need be, stimulating that input. So for example, when we get not entirely helpful input, let's put it that way, from people in the community, what makes it not entirely helpful is it's not about what we're deliberating on. It gets sometimes personal, or it gets off topic. My feeling about that kind of input is always, well, we need to get more input from the rest of the community. And we have to take some responsibility as far as how we get input. And so with this survey, there are many people who are scarcely aware of it. I spoke to about 12 people who are City of Bellingham residents who weren't aware of the survey. we should just be aware of that. And it's okay. None of us are perfect, and there's a limited budget, there's a limited time to do this bag work. And the other piece that I really am emphasizing is that after the survey is complete and they close the window, and they originally were going to close the window at the end of December. And then there was some subsequent discussion, but last week they agreed to extend the deadline till the end of this month. And the important thing here is that to recognize there are time constraints. When the survey is complete and the results are analyzed, it's important to explain the inherent biases of the survey. So, meaning that this is the population we got, and that's just how it lines up with the actual population of Bellingham in terms of income and those types of things. So that's the main thing I wanted to add, is that surveying is a tricky business. In my prior professional experience, I have lots of experience with focus groups and surveys, and it's important to do good analysis afterwards, and then also important meaning not draw conclusions that aren't substantiated by the sampling that you did. And then also on the front end to ask for as diverse of an input as you can. So.
Mike.
Thank you, Christine. Andrew, this is, well, for Andrew, Christine, Steve, I keep reading that there's still a lot of money out there to support broadband. And though we received some, I don't understand how come some of these other PUDs and other agencies are receiving large amounts of money to support their systems. What are we doing differently? Why aren't we after that kind of money to build out Whatcom County? Does anybody have an answer to that, please?
I can comment, and then Andrew may be able to also, but I think the bottom line is that other agencies, the most recent one that I'm observing is Lewis County. They have been in that application process for some time. They had projects ready to proceed on, and it's not that those agencies that have been noted recently in getting those large grants and or loans. It's not like they just started, a month or so ago. They've been in the process for well over a year in some cases, and they've worked their way through. And I think that the Port of Bellingham had just recently been turned down on one grant from the Public Works Trust Board, and that was a process that started many months ago. So it's all in process and timing, and the application and preparedness. And Gina has been successful on a couple of large grants, and we continue to work on preparing for the next round. So, Andrew, I don't know if you want to add anything.
If I can, before Andrew, you go, I totally echo what Steve, you said, and also Andrew, you're brand new, so I recognize that you're carrying a whole bunch of weight that all of a sudden from us in regards to this. But the term that I attended some funding webinars, and the thing that keeps coming up is what do we have that's designed? What do we have that's where that's budgeted, that's costed, and that's relatively limited, and that makes a challenge for you, Andrew, right now to be able to apply this second to a bunch of money. But hopefully that's I'm trying to take some pressure off and for reality that you're all of a sudden in a situation where you got a lot of weight here to do that budgets and costs. But sorry, go ahead.
No, I think we're right in there at the staff level. So we'll get something here well ahead in advance of the funding rounds. And like I said, what the original question, what are we doing differently? I don't know if I would say we're doing things super differently, but what I can tell you is back to what I originally said, which is if we stay laser focused on the Port and the PUD's existing joint agency initiative, we will bring dollars into our community. So I think we just need to hone back in on that, and we can do that really, really well, and we will.
Mike,
Thank
did
you.
anything
No, I
to
just
add?
wanted to say thank you. Good response. You answered my question, so thank you.
Mike, if I could respond to one other element, one thing that that was mentioned in the funding webinar was the phrase shovel worthy. In addition to shovel ready, which is like 5 years ago, or maybe it was 8 years ago, I don't remember. Well, under Obama, the term that got really coined was shovel ready, but now they're using the term shovel worthy, which kind of implies that they're looking for a social benefits kind of score in the projects too. And that's kind of another reason why I'm repeating the importance of capturing in surveys the social benefit too, because there's both a geographic and the economic aspect to broadband.
What's the new term? Shovel
Worthy.
worthy. Okay.
Well, let me finish my part by just saying thank you to all of you that are working on it and report and everything, because it is something our community really needs. And every time I hear, progress, I'm always pleased. It's easy to talk to people about it when you have something to say positive too. So thank you, everyone.
And before we move on to our next agenda item, I just wanted to say that I'm planning on leaving the broadband program update on the agenda, just because this is a line of business that is not established yet. We're building it right now, and I think it's useful for us to always have an update, even if it's a short one, Andrew. So it's not intended to put you on the hot seat, but it's a topic that I know all three of us really care about, and so it's a good way for us to stay on the same page. So just wanted to share that with the other two commissioners. And is there any further discussion on the broadband program update at this time? Okay, thank you very much, Andrew. And then we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is under old business, the civil discourse policy. And John, can you introduce this?
Thank you. This is on for commissioners' discussion. You'll remember in December at a commission meeting, we discussed the increasing tone of implicit intimidation, threats, introduction of gender, family into blog posts, not on PUD sites, but other places, communications that were becoming in our community locally, regionally, nationally, increasingly less civil and not productive to good political debate and outcomes and solution seeking, and it's a community. And the commission asked if I could look at developing some kind of policy around civil discourse, comments, understanding that there's a right of free speech that people have that is not unbridled. There are limits, shouting fire in a crowded theater is the old statement, but one can't be intimidating and make threats direct or implied. There's statutes against that. And so this is an aspirational policy. The commission wanted to convey if there were comments received or in the internet verse, if you will, that how the commission might and the district might respond to threats, implied or direct intimidation efforts, bullying in the comments, how that might be responded to. And we provide for that as a referral to the general manager in my office. But this is an aspirational policy. You cannot, limit free speech, but you can take action if something is intimidating or bullying, and it's really trying to set an expectation or a standard or a goal. Now, I would say I spent some time kind of Googling around trying to see, has this been done before? Has any communities really done much? And quite frankly, there's not a lot out there. There are national centers on civil discourse that try to help and provide models. There wasn't any real resolutions of an elected official to set a standard. City of Akron 2017 passed to have a civil discourse month. It was just a one-page proclamation. The US House of Representatives established a National Day of Civility and passed a resolution in 2017 as well. Took some of that language from the House Representatives resolution, included it here. There's a lot of information, a lot of recitals, but it was designed to provide you some tools to work with, and then really kind of setting a standard. We balance this is it's not expected to be a personnel policy that is enforced. It's not something negotiated with the union to say, here's a new employment policy that you must comply with. It is truly aspirational and trying to elevate the level of discourse and the quality of political discourse. I hope this has come close to meeting your intent, but it's trying to craft something unique and new.
Thank you, John.
So I present it for your discussion. If you have changes that are easy, we can pass them tonight. If you want to provide feedback, we can bring it back for later discussion. So it's the commissioner's direction. I would say that, I use staff and employees interchangeably here, really kind of a vernacular or colloquial language rather than being real formal, and same with PUD versus district. This doesn't have the legislative effect, if you will. So I didn't think that level of precision was necessary.
Commissioner Deshmani, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you for drafting this, John. It's a good starting point. I have a couple of high level topics I want to bring up first. First is that relating back to the point I made earlier about the having a way for the commission to identify where we're seeking what's before us. Like when we do our work of planning our calendar and then planning the next meeting, thinking through what's before us, and then being able to let the public know what we're deliberating on, and being able to solicit input on the things that are relevant to what we're deliberating. That I'm not sure, but I believe that may be in line with what Commissioner Grant, you've said in the past regarding social media as a tool for that purpose. And I'm wondering if this policy should be part of a kind of a group of things that we undertake, which includes a social media approach, rather than just by itself, is what I'm saying. The other thing is that I'd like to do a little bit more research as well on the subject. Speaking to folks who've had issues with public comment, run some ideas by them, and be able to work on this policy for a little bit longer. So that's the other comment I have.
Let me just give it a couple observations. The PUD had considered in about 2017, it's amazing how everything comes around about 2017 here, on a social media policy. There was some discussion of that, but elected not to pursue a social media engagement platform because of the management of content, what other people might say and put on posts, and that would become very burdensome. Now, that was 5 years ago. I think the discussion of the commission now has been, we need to be more engaged. The district may have a goal of being more engaged through social media or through other platforms to have outreach and mechanisms. And I think that in speaking with the president in preparation of this policy and for this, I think there's a goal to look at that in the first half of the year or so as what that public outreach strategy might be and how that could be achieved. I would suggest to bring importance and significance to the discourse element, have them be separate actions. One is an outreach strategy, and one is, how we communicate. I think they're two elements, and if you merge them, you diminish the importance of having, we're going to set a standard and an expectation and an aspirational goal of how we communicate. I didn't want to diminish that. So I think there was a value to separating that. One's an outreach strategy and one's a discourse strategy. or aspirational goal.
Yeah, thank you. That helps, John, that clarification. It's like this policy is about setting boundaries. And then the other thing is about, engagement. And I just want to also say that regarding, the evolution, when we get in the things that we're talking about doing for the future, all involve more engagement with the public. We have historically been more a B2B, business to business type of entity, more so than we will be tomorrow and subsequently. So that, along with it, entails a little bit more public engagement as a result. So I think we will have to evolve with that, and it's better we think about it in advance and then discover later what the public is feeling about what we're undertaking.
Commissioner Murphy, did you have any comments you wanted to share?
Thank you, Christine. I appreciate, John, you writing this. I remember a number of years ago, I talked to a number of other PUDs of what they do, especially to protect their staff from irate customers or whatever you want to say. And they seem to have policies, but I don't, you said that you looked and you couldn't find anything. And I felt that other PUDs did have a way to protect their own in case they have the right to hang up, or they have the right to say, I will hang up, or, I will not tolerate this. This seems to be our first time of doing this. I think it's great to have something in writing that shows that we want to be professional, and that, we just want everybody else to be professional back to all of us. So have you looked into that way?
Well, yeah, let me just say that there are entities that have within their own within their personnel policies or with their general policies, policy procedures that do provide that how you might deal with a disruptive personality or confrontations, and what the course of conduct might be for staff if something arises. That was a little different than trying to say this is a general civil discourse and an aspirational goal that we communicate out of how we want to see communications occurring. It's similar, no question, but it was different from having it come from a legislative body and how we communicate about policy generally than what's a hostile person on a rates and how is staff allowed to address and manage the confrontational scenario and elevate that up a chain of command within an organization. So that's out there. I'm aware of that, Commissioner, but that was a little bit different. And so I'm speaking when I couldn't find anything. It's really this broad-based, how do we elevate civil discourse from a legislative proclamation, from an action of a government saying we are going to try to set a communication standard and an aspirational goal. There are other things out there, and there's other writings. There's a lot of people have written about this. A good article out of the Squim Gazette on restoring political discourse from a year ago. But so yeah, you can find those things, but it's a broad policy statement from a commission or a council. It was difficult to find.
Okay, thank you. That was it.
I had just a few thoughts that I wanted to respond to what Commissioner Deshmani said, and in terms of the getting engagement with the community and feedback. And I think one thing I was going to mention in my commissioner report, but I can bring up now, is just that I think strategic planning is going to be a big part of what we're going to need to do this year once Chris Heimgartner comes on board. And I think certainly thinking about what our community engagement and social media strategy is to inform those efforts is going to be really important. And I think will be, a longer discussion and a really important discussion. So, and I think the two are related, but also separate in some ways. So, but I did just want to say that I think that this idea of community engagement and social media should be part of our strategic planning process that we engage in later in the year. So, and I, you know, I just wanted to say thank you to John too, because, you know, I think that I value the policy, and I think that all of this is just about the fact that language has power, and you know, we like you said, Atul, you know, how do we set boundaries and make sure that everyone that works for the PUD feels safe in their roles? Yeah.
So I'd like to also ask of Steve and also of John some questions. So regarding the policy, Steve, have you reviewed the policy carefully, and do you feel like it's ready for, or close to ready for adoption at this point?
Commissioner, my recommendation is that you put the adoption off for one more meeting, because I think that it gives you an opportunity to review it one more time after your discussion this morning. I have reviewed it. I think that it sets, the way I see it, I think it really sets a standard that you all three agree on as to what your communication should be, the platform that you're trying to raise that communication to, both from the organization out and from others trying to communicate with you and about you. I think it is, as John keeps calling it, an aspirational policy. I think that's what it really is. It's not drawing a line in the sand and says that you will not do this, you will do this, you will do, you know. And I think that this is just a great opportunity for all three of you to have these kind of communications amongst yourself, because I think that's what I've seen examples over the last 16 years that I've been with this PUD, from other PUDs where some of the commissioners have not engaged and come together and agreed that this is the level of communication, this is how we're going to treat each other and how we're going to react and talk to the community. And you know, they've had some pretty significant, those organizations have had some pretty significant changes within their commission because of it, because they simply have not been willing to sit down and talk about it. And I think that's the first and best, highest value, if that's the way to say it, in having this kind of a policy brought forward. So I guess my answer to you is, I think you could adopt it today, but if you choose to wait 2 weeks, I think that would be appropriate too. So.
Well, if the commissioners are okay with it, I'd like to have a little bit more time to review with this. And I think that, John, your comment was very helpful. And I'd like to make sure that this is, I'm thinking of it correctly, that I should look at this policy as very much setting the tone and also some boundaries, and not being so much about how we solicit input, but being more about establishing those boundaries. So if I'm on the mark there, then I'd like the opportunity to. And John, the other second question is, were you able to get Peter Rafato's input on this? Obviously, he has lots of experience with this subject.
I did share it with him, get his input from his experiences with the city, and yeah, he had no changes of anything material or suggestions that were material do it differently. I would say that, just to be clear, it's aspirational in boundaries, suggests some ability to enforce, and we can't, but this is an expectation. The enforcement would be, frankly, referral to the county prosecuting attorney's office for referral of a crime of intimidating a public servant, or maybe seeking an harassment or restraining order for threatening behavior, so it's hard to enforce this type of thing, particularly trying to control what is about the PUD in in a blog that someone has. But it is communicating, that does communicate that we may not respond and those comments may be ignored.
Right. I mean, what we ignore and what we don't ignore is very much up to us. So what this does do, so I meant boundaries not in the legal sense of the word. I meant boundaries in the kind of emotional intelligence, relationship sense of the word.
Hard for me to separate who I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And so yeah, but thank you for that clarification. I was referring to, like I can, in any conversation with anybody, I could say that, well, it's not illegal to call me an idiot, but if you call me an idiot in this conversation, I will listen less to you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Steve, I want to thank you for what you said, and John, I thank you for the writing of it. I don't see for me any changes to be made on it. I thought it was written well. Steve, what you shared about other PUDs, yeah, I'm well aware of those things too. And that's one thing I think is really, as a PUD, Wacom, we're unique, but we're also unique in how we come together as a board and work together. And I think that speaks a lot of us. So I wait to hear what you have to say, Altull, what changes. But for me right now, I'm okay with what it says. I'm fine with it. Thank you.
Well, it sounds like what we're moving towards is putting this on the agenda for the next meeting under old business. And if there are additional revisions, we will direct them to John Sitkin, and we'll have this in the agenda packet for 2 weeks from now. Does that
John,
sound-
I'll get you an input, John, this week.
Okay, wonderful.
So you're asking for us to just table this to our next meeting, Christine? Is that what you're saying?
Do we need to take a motion on that, or take action on that, John?
I don't think you could do a formal motion, but there's a consent I've heard from everybody to table this, and I would just enter that it's agreed to table to the next meeting.
Okay, great. Any further discussion before we move on to the next agenda item? Okay, so next agenda item is the general manager report.
Thank you, commissioners. I have a few items. I'll be brief, but I'm going to start out by asking Rebecca if she would provide some comments about an upcoming seminar that she's working on, and that we're partially sponsoring, but her work with the Whatcom Information Network and others. So please, Rebecca, if you want to.
Yes, thank you. And I will be forwarding you after this meeting a save the date. I did go out, I believe, early this week, but I'm not sure everyone got it because I didn't get it. But we do have a save the date. This is it's called the Wacom Marine Research Symposium. It is scheduled for February 23rd. And it will be focused on research, obviously, that's been going on in Wacom County along the marine research program or area. So far, what we did is we sent out requests for papers, and we've made a decision. I think we've had 9 that we've approved, and I think they've all agreed that they would provide a presentation. Each one will be about 20 minutes long. So it's a full day symposium, starts at 8, goes to about 3:30 or 4. But all those details will be out on a website soon. Just as a little bit of background information, we have 2 speakers that we're really excited to have. One is Tammy Cooper Woodridge. She is a Nooksack Indian tribal member, and she is a traditional storyteller. She's going to open the symposium, and then right after lunch, we are really fortunate to have Verena Priest, who is the Washington State Poet Laureate this year, and she is a Lummi Nation member. So we have 2 really great speakers, inspirational speakers. Some of the other, just briefly, some of the other programs will include, which is very great interest right now, is a presentation on the invasion of the European green crab, which is quite heavily impacted the Wacom County area. That will be presented with a consortium from Lummi Nation, Northwest Indian Commission, Washington Sea Grant, and WDFW. So that should be a really interesting presentation. Another one is it's called Using Light Traps at the Cherry Point Herring and for Cherry Point Herring and Crab Assessment. This is again out of the Lummi Resource Department, along with the Washington Department of Natural Resources. And it's specific to the Cherry Point Herring and crab, so that would be very localized. And we all thought that would be a great interest to learn how we're assessing what the impacts are of various things on the herring, which is of course a very important food source for salmon and orcas. And there's several other, I'm not going to go into all of them, but the other local one that's focused is monitoring of the Cherry Point Aquatic Reserve. And this has been basically primarily a volunteer effort headed by the resources and North Sound Baykeepers, and they've been doing this for years, just assessing how all of the impacts of local climate change and other impacts. And then there's two that are a little bit broader, and then one of them is it's done from a woman out of California. I just misplaced her paper, but and it's a focus on specifically how the 2021 heat, this whole heat, high heat period we had during the summer, and it's not just in Whatcom County, but up and down the coast, how it impacted fisheries and things like that, so, and then there's another one that is being done by Puget Sound Partnership, focusing on how climate change is affecting natural resources. So we have some real specific presentations and some little broader presentations that all will have something to do with Whatcom County. So stay tuned. We'll have that website up hopefully by late January, and we'll be sending people will receive an email how to register. And we're looking forward to having it. It's one of our first big symposiums we had, and it is being put on by the Wacom Watershed Information Network, and the PUD is helping to support it by providing the Zoom component to it.
Could you repeat the date again, Rebecca?
February 23rd. And I'll send you guys a save the date after the meeting.
Thank you, Rebecca.
You're welcome.
Looking forward to it.
Should be good.
I had just two other things quickly. The state auditors had their exit interview with staff, and Commissioner Murphy attended that. We were pleased to get another 2-year clean audit. We had one minor recommendation that was not even part of their management letter, but it was just a recommendation that we look at how we choose contracts or establish contracts for off of our small works roster. They're recommending that we do a little bit more in terms of interviewing and so forth. But other than that, a fully clean audit, and I'd just like to extend a big thank you to Annette and Tracy, and of course everybody else on staff, but their leadership in not just through the audit, but getting us to the point of not having any issues. And this was completely a remote audit, and there were times that Annette actually hand delivered some documents to the auditor in Bellingham office, but I think it went very well, and they showed their appreciation to staff for all the work that we did through the audit. So again, a big thank you to everybody. The only other thing I had was thank you to our water operators. Oh,
Phil had a question.
On the audit, is it you may
Yeah.
go now? or afterwards?
pardon?
Would you rather me bring up my question now or later? I have a question on the audit.
You go ahead. I'll
Okay.
try. We'll try to answer it.
Okay, obviously, we have covered in our public meetings, many of the challenges we've had with procurement in the last 2 years. Was there any aspect relating to our procurement practices that we've had to do as a result of, the adverse consequences of COVID, supply chain interruptions, and so on and so forth that came up in the audit. And is it something to follow up and ask for guidance regarding that subject, or is no news good news in this situation?
First of all, there was nothing that came up through the audit that raised any concerns by the auditors regarding procurement in terms of changes in contracts, anything to do with because of either supply chain or COVID related, nothing like that. And in terms of, I don't know if this is answering your question, but Annette, and that comment did come up and was made by the auditors during the exit interview, that they very much appreciate the relationship between the auditor's office, the auditors that we have, and Annette and Tracy, in terms of asking them in advance, are we doing the right thing? Is this the right direction to take on this or that? And so I think that Annette has created a real communication program with the auditor's office over the last few years, where prior to 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, it was pretty unusual to call the auditor's office and ask their advice on how to approach a topic or an issue. Because I think that there's a change in attitude and an approach by the auditor's office, but also because of the change in how we approach those kinds of things, that we've got a real symbiotic relationship now with the auditor's office. So we're not afraid to ask questions. Years ago, as you ask a question, what's wrong? What are you doing? And that's not the case anymore. So.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, when I think about audits, I always think about what do we do that's non-conforming, so to speak, or things where we have something written in a procedure where we aren't necessarily doing it to that letter. And when I think of that, the biggest area where we've deviated from established practices is because of these challenges during COVID as it relates to procurement. And so that's why I was asking that question.
Commissioner Murphy, I don't know if you wanted to add any comments. You were able to attend the exit interview.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Both to Christine and O'Toole, I would say probably one of the toughest things is our audits that we face. I know there's a lot going on in the PUD, but when you have someone kind of taking what would you call it, a microscope and going through everything. When Steve said that Annette takes some paperwork into them, it's not just like 1 or 2 pieces of paper. It could be boxes, bundles. It's a lot of information, and she delivered on time and got them everything they want, as well as everybody else's help. I know Tracy was involved, Brian was involved, and others too. But it is always something to say very high about our staff as well as us as a PUD. Because the level of professionalism that not only the auditors are showing back to us. There was a time difference where I won't go into it because it's a public meeting, but I'll tell you what, there was a few times we stayed up at night worrying about things, and we do not anymore. It's just incredible difference. Both parties worked great, very professional, very appreciative of each, and I was so happy afterwards. I could have probably danced in front of them all, but I didn't. But no, I'm always pleased with it, and so it was a very good audit. So thank you to everybody who made it possible that way. That's it for me.
Okay.
Steve, I think you had a few more items, yes?
Just 2 more items quickly. During about a week and a half of very challenging temperatures and weather conditions and COVID related, we had to call upon our water operators to be on duty 24/7 for some time because of the fragile ice issue. And We had different conditions at at our two different diversions. Well, same conditions for a very short time, but once frazzle ice started to occurring at both of the diversions, we had to address it as we usually do with the blow-off systems, our compressor operated blow-off systems to keep the fish screens open. But at the end of several days, the river actually froze over at plant 1, which at that time, what happens is that the frazzle ice goes away. And so plant 1 was able to operate pretty much normal under those kind of conditions. Plant 2, we're having challenges for a couple of days with trying to keep up. We were able to do that, but it was starting to cause some limitations, but we never lost water supply to Cherry Point and fully met the needs of all of our customers out there. So I just want to extend a really big shout out to our water operators. This was at the same time we had 2 of our water operators were out with COVID positive tests. So calling upon the other 4 water operators to handle things was a real challenge. And it wasn't just the water operators, but Dwayne stepped in and was there pretty much the same amount of time helping bring fuel supplies to the compressors and so forth. So just a big thank you to everybody that kept it going. The last thing I'll have, and that is just again, a reminder that tomorrow is the WAPUDA meeting. I would expect that if you don't have the information, please let me know and we'll send it to you. But I think you should all have the information on the meetings that are scheduled tomorrow and on Thursday. And the last part of that is that there are a number of bills going through the legislature. I will send you to make sure that you have the information on the broadband bills. There's also several water bills that are going through the legislature dealing with drought resilience, project funding for things like storage, water storage, and we're monitoring all those. If you don't have any of that information that's coming out from WAPUDA, I thought I sent you the information that came out of the Washington Water Utility Council on water projects, but if you don't have that, please let me know and I'll send that to you too. So that's all I had.
Hey,
Thank you.
Steve.
Yes.
Well,
Go ahead, Frank.
when you talked about plant 2, where was the problem at? Was it at drawing from the river or was it the problem in the ponds?
No, it was the problem drawing through keeping the frazzle ice under control at the diversion at the river.
Is that something that needs to be addressed in the future?
Well, we had some discussion, at your last meeting about that. And several years ago, we looked at different options in terms of trying to reduce the amount of ice that was attached to the screens. That's the problem. And, what happens is, very briefly, is that because we don't have any storage beyond our treatment plant, we have to keep that supply going 24/7. And fortunately, if you would, this year, because Alcoa or Intelco was not operating in terms of, the full smelter operation, the amount of water that we needed to move to Cherry Point was reduced compared to, say, last year. If we would have had Alcoa operating full steam, we might have had a problem. We don't know that. So bottom line is, Commissioner Dwayne and Brian and Paul Sigmund have started putting together a list of places to talk to and coming up with ideas on how we can possibly reduce the amount of ice that's actually attracted to the screen. So.
Okay, because I was thinking about the future of Cherry Point. You've been sending the commissioners some information about possible customers, and most of that's been electrical, but there's got to be some water, I would think, in the future. And so if we are going to be impacted by, we may need to fix that now. And if storage is one of them, then maybe we better start putting that up on the front to discuss.
We've had, I would agree with you totally. And, you know, several years ago, we actually had Murray Smith look at constructing storage out at Cherry Point. At that time, the numbers, the cost, I should say, to do that, and coming up with a reservoir that was large enough to hold water equivalent to a 24-hour period. You know, we're along with other improvements out at Cherry Point to move that water then from the storage to, or the reservoir to the customer. I think we were in, you know, in the 30, between just under $30 million, I believe it was. And the customers, we had discussion with the customers. We actually put it on an agenda to have a discussion with them. And the response that we got from them was, well, you know, we're getting by, we're getting by. I can tell you that I think that if we would have had the same river conditions that we had in that week and a half or so here, and if Intelco was trying to operate full bore, I think we might have had a problem. So, but, you know, no way to guarantee that. And, you know, how many times since I've been here have we had to deal with frazzle ice? It's probably, I would say, probably half of the years. In 15 or 16 years, probably 7 or 8 years, we've had to deal with it. It's not every year. And this year was significantly worse than what I've experienced, at least in the time I've been here. So long answer to your question, yes, I think we need to raise the issue, and I think we need to seriously consider both doing something at the diversions, at the intakes, as well as looking at storage. So.
And I agree, and I don't know how the other fellow commissioners feel, but you know, we're seeing warmer summers, we're seeing more droughts, and now we're seeing this on the other end, our winters, and definitely we should be putting that at the top of the list to be discussing to find out what we're going to do, because it's better to plan and do it right instead of try to fix something in emergencies, or the old, what is the other saying? Pay me now, pay me later. Later always hurts. So I'll wait to hear from the other commissioners, but you know, this should probably be something we should address. But I'm happy that the others are working on it. That's good. Thank you.
So I may be asking Steve in a dumb question, but it's okay. I'll learn from it. But I'm guessing that storage this far down the river is not a potential ecological benefit, correct? Meaning that if we store this far down the river, we won't be able to justify it as an in-stream flow assistance type of solution.
No, Commissioner, when I was speaking about storage, I was speaking about post-treatment, after our treatment. And so that when we had Murray Smith do this study a few years ago, we were looking at a reservoir, open air reservoir out at Cherry Point, so that if we had problems with either one or both of our diversions, whether it's frazzle ice or extreme low flow in the river during the summer, or some other activity that caused disruption in our supply system, that we would be able to work with our customers out at Cherry Point, possibly start reducing the amount of flow that they needed, but also retain enough water availability that we could get through the time of change, or the time with the problem. So two different, if we talk about storage for river purposes, not for our supply purposes, then you're absolutely right. Storage this far down the river is probably not the location. So I was talking about specifically supply to Cherry Point.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification and yeah, and pre-treatment storage is not, there's no practical ideas for pre-treatment storage near our facilities, I assume, because we don't have the kind of geography and space needed to put in massive storage.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean-
I'll too, at one time and Steve, you have to, maybe Brian, I thought at one time we had a site kind of picked. We also had somebody draw something up, looked like a park almost with, with this gigantic shapely looking pond, lake, what do you want to call it? And I thought it looked real nice. We never followed up on it. Did I dream that, or didn't we have something like that at one time?
I believe we've done at least 3 studies since 1998, maybe, on different, looking at different locations for pre-treatment storage. Excuse me, areas along the main stem and off the main stem, where we identified opportunities to build either one large storage system or a number of different smaller systems. The most recent study was looking at, I think we came up with 6 different locations, and one of them was the gravel pits over by Everson. And the idea would be to take water off the river when the minimum in-stream flows were being met, or exceeded, I should say, and dump water into areas like the gravel pit. And then when the low flows hit during the summer period, or special times of the year when the flow was not meeting what was identified for salmon habitat, that we could dump that water back out in. You can also use those kinds of locations and those kinds of reservoirs to move water from the river when the flow is being exceeded, and then put it into either the reservoir or move it into streams such as 10 Mile, 4 Mile, those areas. The one area that we looked at several times that was included in this last 6 site identification process was just north or upriver from us here at Plant 2. And there's property that's owned by the DNR up there. It's interesting when you look at the geology, or I should say, the geology of how the river, when we get high excess flow in the river, it starts coming over the banks just north of us and literally flows between us here at the office and our Plant 2, and then moves downstream. And then there's floodgates, if you would, on both ends of that area. Anyway, one of those areas that we looked at for storage was just north of us. So I think that we need to start looking at both, both pre-treatment and post-treatment storage. So.
Well, thank you, Steve. As far as, I mean, maybe I would love to learn more about some of these water storage options. So perhaps that's something we could get on a future agenda item, is kind of getting us all up to speed on the work that's already been done and what we might look to do going forward. If that sounds like all 3 commissioners have an interest in learning more about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Glad to. Rebecca and I have been talking for a couple of months here about when it would be appropriate to do take a special session of the commission, for the commission, and do a water resource work session and talk about, not only about not just what we just spoke to here, but everything else that we're doing on water supply, and thinking about maybe that second meeting in February or first meeting in March, something like that, once Chris is
Yeah, the
on.
new GMA really like that too, as a part of his learning curve too.
Yeah.
Okay, Steve, let's work on fitting that into one of those agendas. And then Any further discussion about the general manager report from either of my fellow commissioners? No? Okay, then let's move on to commissioner reports. Commissioner Deshmani, do you want to start?
Sure, great. So this week, I'm planning to attend WPUDA meetings on Wednesday and Thursday. There's one issue we have to just clarify, Commissioner Grant. They have a panel this week on which they want the Wacom PUD to talk about our experiences with the GM replacement process and recruitment. And either one of us, any one of us could participate in that. So I wanted to find out if you have a preference for that, or I should do it. And I'm wondering if you have a preference for that.
I replied to Lena that I would be happy to do it. I didn't copy you because of public open meeting.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to do it if you're.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. And
so yeah, of course on Wednesday I will be at attend the Commissioner Education, and then on Thursday I'll be attending the Water Committee officially, and I'll be also monitoring the telecom and energy meetings. But I believe that I'm not the lead on that, but I will be monitoring this. Just FYI to my colleagues. I attended the Broadband Advisory Group meeting last week. I pretty much stated everything that I had to offer from that meeting. And then, yeah, I have no items planned for next week. So.
thank you, Commissioner
my
Murphy.
report.
Oh, thank you. This would be for Altul. Altul, when you're involved in the WPUDA these other days, would you mind stepping in on Friday, the board meeting, and attending that, representing us?
Friday too, yeah.
The 12th, 13th, and 14th, I've been trying to get doctors set up, and I have some tests to take, and they all fell during 12th, 13th, and 14th. So I'm going to be running in and out of tests and doctors and stuff, and I cannot attend any of the meetings that I'm supposed to. Even the government board, I will not be able to attend too. So I know Christine is the backup on that if you wanted to attend that, but I apologize. I was going to make that my report, but you were talking, so I just jumped in. That
Yeah, for Friday's Board of Directors meeting.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was it for me. Thank you.
And I don't have the agenda in front of me, but if the government relations one works for I'm also planning to go to the meetings. I have a few other things going on, and if it works for my calendar, I can jump in on that one too.
Okay. And the government is on Thursday, the 13th.
Government relations Thursday.
What time is it?
2:30
on Thursday.
Yeah.
Yeah, are you planning to do that? Are you Atul, should I jump in on that one?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, I can do that one. So 2:30 on Thursday.
Thank
okay.
you to both of you.
Yeah, any other updates?
I forgot to, Commissioner Sai, also, I'm tracking a couple of bills that don't appear yet to be in WPUDA's list. And I'll be learning more about those this week. But there are some bills around ecosystem resilience / water, some of them pertaining to storage. WPUDA's actually expressed some concerns about some of them and is supporting of others. So I'll be able to report after this week. I think we'll all know a lot more about the different bills that are out there. And I'd like to suggest that like we did in last year, that we we all compare our notes at our next regular meeting, and talk about the bills and figure out if we, where we're at on those and what we understand about those, and, moving towards potentially getting involved in supporting or passing resolutions in support of any bills, in February or March, because it's a short session, so we have less time to express support. And I think we can be influential because a lot of, there are several bills where our local folks are leaders on them. So
Yeah.
that's it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Commissioner Murphy, did you have anything else to add?
I did not. I shared everything I was going to share.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, great. I have a few things. I'm also going to be attending the WAPUDA meetings. And then I did want to just share, I spent a little bit of time at the end of December seeing how other PUD commissions operate and what their commission meetings are like. And I just wanted to share that I looked at quite a few commission meeting web pages, and as far as we are the only PUD that I found that shares Zoom recordings of our meetings. Everyone else just does audio. And so, I think so much of communication is nonverbal. And so I just wanted to say that, I think it's great that we're committed to transparency to the degree that we are, especially during these times. And I was just surprised to find that, as far as I could tell, there's not a single other PUD out there that's sharing their Zoom recordings with their public. The only per diem I did have a check-in with the Broadband steering committee, Steve and I had a good check-in at the beginning of the year. And then I also did touch base with Chris Heimgartner, and I know he and his family are in the middle of getting ready for their move across the country. And I just, said, let us know how we can support you. And he did not have any specifics as far as what he needed. So we have a meeting scheduled for February 3rd. So just, 2 days after he starts, to kind of start checking in and prepare for his first meeting. But, I know he's really in the thick of it, getting his whole life across the country right now. But so just wanted to share those things. And then, I think kind of thinking a little bit more long-term, once Chris is on board, I really want to start having some discussions with him and with the two of you about how we want to approach strategic planning and getting some special meetings on the calendar potentially, and figuring out a timeline for that, because I do think that will be an important process for us to sort of gel with him and kind of just do some, I think, very necessary team building, maybe even in person. We'll see where the year takes us. So that's it for me. Any questions or further discussion on commission reports before we move on to public comment? Okay, great. So the next item on our agenda is public comment. And Rebecca, could you help with that? Do we have any?
Yes. At this point, I do not have any hands raised.
Okay.
Debbie All did put something in the Q&A.
Okay, I have one now for Max and Carol Perry. So let me allow them to talk. Max
Okay,
and
great.
Carol, are you now can speak? Can you unmute, Max?
Max, yeah, Max and Carol, you're muted, so.
Whoops, where'd they go? I allowed them to talk. Max and Carol, can you hear us?
Oh.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Carol.
I called your office this morning in frustration. And that has been the case for almost 2 years now. I would just like to challenge you to open your meetings up to the public. There are so many things going on, especially in the world of water. And I think the PUD can really be a big player. There's lots of needs, domestic water, storage, and just as you were talking about storage today, we witnessed the presentation for storage about Cherry Point years ago. We witnessed the 6 projects that you put forth in a beautiful notebook. In fact, we have a copy of that somewhere on the shelf. The farming community is really zeroing in on water storage as we've had this deluge. And even county council members, I can remember, have said, how in the world can we have a water problem when we have this immense amount of water? I know the city of Linden has a project somewhere because the public is pretty much shut out of the process. I haven't heard where that's going, but that has the potential to help farmers, the city, the fish habitat, so many things. And I see so many dollars going down the drain. But anyway, just for what it's worth, for the first time in 1.5 years, I've managed to speak. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Carol. Do either of my fellow commissioners want to respond at all?
I just wanted to say that to clarify that I think what Carol, you're referring to is the inability to have public present in person, correct? Because we do have this, venue through Zoom for the public to participate, but is that not working for you over the last 1.5 years?
It's been very difficult.
Okay.
We have a good system, but to respond, and it's been my observation, and I have observed a lot, especially in the matters of water, that when people are allowed to be together, and like Christine pointed out, there's something about communication in person. There's a spirit about it, and I have seen solutions come together. When you bring people who have an immense amount of experience, they bring to bear all sorts of things, and there's just a dynamic that isn't there with Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the comment.
Chair, I believe that Debbie all put something in the Q&A, and I don't know if all the commissioners reviewed that, and I think that it'd be good if Debbie could either speak or I'd be glad to read what happened in the Q&A.
I don't know. Yeah, Debbie, I don't know if Debbie is still on. I think she signed off.
Okay.
But she did, she actually, why don't I just read it out loud?
Okay.
So Debbie All, who's the executive director of the Mount Baker Foundation, said the Mount Baker Foundation is interested in supporting any additional survey work in rural areas. And I believe she was referring to broadband survey work in rural areas.
Yeah.
So there's that comment. And
So,
yeah,
yeah, and I believe that, I guess we shouldn't leave any offer unanswered. And so perhaps I'd be glad to, since I brought up the survey subject, to follow up with Debbie all after this meeting and discuss that further. And then maybe someone from from staff, Andrew or Steve might also be involved.
Commissioner, it's certainly up to you if you want to make contact with Debbie, but my suggestion is that maybe Andrew follow up and first and see if she has something very specific in mind, or if it's just a general, indication of support, and does that follow through with funding? What's her intention? I think Andrew would be a good contact there because he and Gina are working on this interlocal agreement and moving ahead with the curb study.
Right, that's a good point. So I'll just say right here then, Andrew, Steve, my input is this on this subject is that out in the outlying areas, there's so many different obvious geographical areas of underservice or non-service. I think a good way to organize effort would be to continue along the lines of work that Gina did early on, a couple years ago, very much focused on schools, basically, and emergency services that are still struggling with service and being underserved, and to more fully document that, because Debbie all did help fund some work a couple of years ago with interns, student interns, with what they had. And now we've got better tools for load testing. And now we've got, we're further down the road. So additional work a lot to quantify the lack of service, the degree of underservice could be really helpful. So particularly, and I think a good would be to return back to the areas that Gina had started focusing on, which is this young people, students, and emergency services.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and Andrew will follow up, and then we'll let the commission know what kind of feedback we get from Debbie.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could look at it as a way to match that curb money.
Yeah.
Another way to look at it, Andrew and Steve. Okay.
Okay, Rebecca, are there any other hands raised for public comment?
No, there are not.
Okay, thank you for your help, and we will now close public comment. And the next item on our agenda is the executive session. John, do you have an estimate for how long this is going to take?
I would say expect 20 to 30 minutes. I think I'll text where we're at after about 15, 20 minutes. We'll start with we'll start with a review of qualifications and for review of performance. It'll be the commission and myself, and then I'll text Steve and Brian when to join us on potential litigation. But I would estimate roughly 20 minutes.
Great, and no action?
No action. No, well, there is potential action on item number 10.
Oh, right. And so for the public, we do have another item on the agenda after this executive session. So before we adjourn. So do either of the commissioners want a short break before we go to the executive session? When should we all convene in 9:28, 5 minutes? Does that sound good?
9:28 to 9:30, somewhere in there.
Okay, so everybody has the link from John, yes? Okay. All right, we'll see you in the executive session.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Grant, do you want me to take this?
Yeah, but we're still waiting.
We're waiting Mike. We're waiting for Mike Murphy.
Yeah.
I see that.
Yeah, and so we'll just wait for him.
You're muted, Atul.
You're muted, Atul.
There's my,
It said, please check back in 30 minutes, but maybe we should put the time that we're returning, because it depends on when you see that, please check back in 30 minutes, you might check back at a different time. So
that's a good point. Okay, so we have just completed an executive session, and the next item on the agenda is approval of contract amendment for Steve Jilk, and John is going to introduce this.
Thank you, commissioners. As you know, you have an existing contract with Steve to serve as the general manager through June 30 of 2022. That was extended in December of 2022, the existing contract, for the purposes largely to allow sufficient time to recruit, identify, retain, and then for a new general manager, not knowing how long that would take. It happened efficiently, and you have a contract for a new general manager that contract is effective February 1st. So after February 1st, would have a circumstance of 2 general managers under contract and without a clarity. So we need to amend the contract with Steve. Only the commission would amend that contract, although Steve in post under this new contract would report directly to the general manager and perform the duties as assigned by the new general manager under his authority. And you do have to amend the contract. So there's a little bit of uniqueness of cart and horse, if you will. Steve is an employee supervised by the general manager after February 1, but the current general manager or the new general manager doesn't amend the contract. So the economics of the terms and the contract have to be approved by this commission, but post February 1st, all duties and work will be under the supervision and direction of the general manager, not the commission. So we're a little bit of a unique scenario here, that this is really the exit platform contract, if you will, with this restated and amended contract. So the terms essentially are the same as the existing contract, and except the vehicle will no longer be provided, and payout of accrued vacation would be, or other benefits would be paid out over a 3-year period rather than up to 2 that was currently provided. That was a benefit, I think, both to Steve and the district. Where Steve would house himself after February 1st will be determined by Chris Heimgartner, the new general manager, but it's anticipated that he, as an in-house consultant to the general manager, he'll be mostly working off-site, except as needed to be in the office to assist and facilitate transition and other duties as assigned by Chris. So that's all part of the transition planning and coordination that Chris and Steve will work out come the end of the month and the beginning of next month. So this is on for your agenda for your approval. Steve, do you have anything, I guess, yeah. Muted.
Just, I've had a couple of discussions with Chris about after February 1st, and location yet to be determined, but we're trying to work out having to move Aaron Peterson out of his office here at our main office up to the shop office area, and we're waiting on some furniture actually to allow that to happen. If that doesn't happen, then I'll be trying to work out of that office up there, basically off a table and whatever. Chris would just soon have me not sitting outside his office here and completing work. So the other is that Chris and I have had just a couple of very brief discussions about post February 1st, and we've yet to work out time in the office, time out of the office, that kind of a thing. So other than that, I don't have anything else.
So this is on for commission consideration and approval, and I believe this fits with the direction I've received. So a motion for approval of the restated and amended contract would be appropriate.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion
Christine.
carries. Oh, yeah.
No, the motion is carried, but I'd like to say to Steve, I've been thinking about the years, since you first started, walked in through the door, so to speak, into now, and lot of, let's talk about water. A lot of water has gone by us over those years. I just want you to know how much I appreciate all you've done for us. So it hits me a little in the heart to go approve this motion. So anyhow, thank you.
You're welcome. And I'm hoping that we can, our time together is not ended and over the next several months and possibly beyond, especially around water issues. Hopefully I can be of some assistance. So.
Okay,
Okay, well, thank you. And that is the last item on our agenda. So is there anything else today for the good of the order? Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining the meeting today, and the meeting is closed.
Great job chairing, Christine.
Thank you. Have a great
thank you
day.
all. Have a good one. Good to see everybody.